Look, as a manager of people, as an employer, as an entrepreneur, and as even an investor in startups, I can tell you the most important thing for your business is the quality of the people you hire. The best part is that great candidates are already on LinkedIn. Employees hired through LinkedIn are 30% more likely to stick around for at least a year compared to those hired through the leading competitor. And I will tell you that the great thing about LinkedIn is that you're not just looking at random people. You're able to see the people who your friends and trusted peers and colleagues, who they trust and who they've hired in the past and who they recommend. And hiring doesn't have to be complicated. Realistically, when you have a business to run, you don't want to spend hours on hiring. You want to hire the right person as quickly as possible. That's why LinkedIn Jobs AI Assistant suggests immediately 25 great fit candidates daily so you can invite them to apply and keep things moving. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Altucher, then promote it to use LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant, making it easier and faster to find the top candidates. That's linkedin.com/Altucher. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Today on the James Altucher Show.
Everyone, 100% of Hollywood is nervous about what is the next generation of Hollywood, given all of the advances and the very fast advances that are happening in technology.
You have to distill it down and look at what aspects of filmmaking, because it's a really complex mechanism, a system. To go and make a film like a Ready Player One, I mean, how many thousands of people work on these films? And there may be 15 different channels and aspect pillars that are necessary to support these films. And I think if you can take 10 of those pillars and reduce the cost up to 90%, that's really where we can start to win as an industry in the box office.
Hollywood's been dead for 5 years now, if you read the titles. Every day, Hollywood's dead, Hollywood's dead. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show.
So Tye Sheridan is one of my favorite actors. You might know him. He was Cyclops in a bunch of the X-Men movies like X-Men Apocalypse. He was the main character of Ready Player One, which is not only a great movie, but one of my favorite science fiction books. He was all the way back. One of his first movies was Mud with Matthew McConaughey. He's been in a ton of just really great movies. But I had no idea he was a massive AI entrepreneur since 2016, while he was still doing the movies. So I had Tye come on the show along with Nikola Todorovic. Together, they started a visual effects company called Wonder Studio, which ultimately started adapting all these or creating all of these AI tools to make visual effects. So I wanted them both on not only to talk about how AI is going to affect the movie making process to the point where someone like me can make a movie that would normally cost hundreds of millions to make because of all the visual effects. So not only how is this going to affect Hollywood, but I wanted to find out how he kind of did both of these amazing careers, movie star plus entrepreneur at the same time. And also wanted to learn from Nikola a little bit more about where AI was going. Is it going to take jobs away? What's going to happen? So fascinating conversation. Here's Tye Sheridan and Nikola Todorovic. Tye Sheridan, Nikola Todorovic, so many different backgrounds here. And, you know, Tye, by the way, I just want to say, maybe everybody talks to you about the X-Men movies and Cyclops. The Card Counter is one of my favorite movies of all time.
Oh, cool.
So
Well,
I really like that
watching it.
movie. You played such a great role in it, and it was such a different kind of role than Cyclops also. And it's really impressive to see your range between those two movies.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And I'm so glad you're on the show. And Nikola, I really want to hear the background, how you guys met, and you basically started this company, which has now been bought by Autodesk. And it's kind of, as I described in the intro, it's kind of this right on the edge of the conversation of what is going on in Hollywood right now. I just spoke at a conference in LA about the role of AI in the the movie industry, and a big movie studio asked me to speak at this conference. Everyone, 100% of Hollywood is nervous about what is the next generation of Hollywood, given all of the advances and the very fast advances that are happening in technology. And your company was on the leading edge of it. So, Tye, you are and were and still are a big movie actor. How did you get involved in, like, how did you guys meet? How did you decide to start a tech company, and what happened?
Well, James, first of all, thanks for having us on the show. And yeah, I guess Nikola, we met 11 or 12 years ago, probably.
Yeah, 2013.
2013, we were, I got into film. I randomly kind of fell into film. It wasn't like, something I was striving to do, but I was 12 years old, and I got randomly casted in this Terrence Malick movie. They were casting kids across the states of Texas and Oklahoma. I grew up in Texas, and so they were casting through public schools. They ended up recruiting like 10,000 kids to come and audition for this film. And so I just got a letter in the mail to come to an audition, and that's how I ended up getting into the film industry.
Wait, why did you get the letter in the mail? Like, did a teacher say?
Okay, you used to be able to do this, but you can't do it now, obviously. In public schools, as long as you had the superintendent's permission in the state of Texas, you could kind of walk through the hallways. You couldn't talk to kids, you couldn't interact, but you could kind of look at kids and then tell the teachers, hey, can you give these 5 kids a letter to come to an audition? So kind of like visually scouting, recruiting, kids for auditions. That's what they did basically for a year or two. Yeah, so I think they ended up getting like 10,000 kids to come out and audition for The Tree of Life was the film.
Yeah, with Brad Pitt, Sean Penn.
That's right. And so I came home with this letter. I gave it to my parents. I didn't even know what it was. They said, "Oh, it's an invitation to go to a movie audition. Do you want to go?" I said, "Well, I mean, I don't know." They said, why don't you go? You could always tell people you got to audition for a movie one time." I said, "Yeah, that sounds cool. No big deal." So I went, and I saw several of my friends there, guys I played baseball with, went to school with, whatever. Ended up getting a call back, and then another call back, and then this process went on for like a year. Ended up getting cast in film. And so the summer I was 12 years old. I ended up working on a film set with all these amazing people. And then, which brings us to the film that Nikola and I met on. The cinematographer of that film was Chivo, Emmanuel Lubezki. And then he was shooting this film, what was that, 2013, called Last Days in the Desert. I ended up working on the film, and then Nikola was on the film as well. That's how we met, and just kind of became buddies and friends, and both had aspirations to do a lot of things in the industry, and curious guys and hungry to learn, hungry for knowledge. And I think that's really where it all started. We were friends first, and just had a lot of likenesses.
And Nikola, what were you doing on the film?
Not on this film, but I come from visual effects background. So I was doing visual effects as an artist and a VFX supervisor, but I didn't have so much experience on set. This was right after college. And so I actually ended up on that set because I wanted to watch Chivo work. There's Emmanuel Lubezki, the cinematographer. So I really just ended up on that set to jump around departments and kind of shadow and learn. So that was a coincidence. And then Tye and I were both writing at the time and exchanging notes and scripts and what are we writing, etc. And so the company really started with our desire to make movies. And it was, I always say everything we wrote was kind of too expensive. We would usually write sci-fi, and then we realized, okay, it's $100 million movie. We can't afford that. And that's how we started looking at technology. How do we cut the cost of visual effects if we want to make a movie like this? We'll get more into it. Funny enough, it wasn't the first idea. AI obviously wasn't the first idea because we were little. We started a company in 2016. Both of us, first time starting a startup, didn't know anything about it. Went through an accelerator in Texas called Capital Factory, where we learned quite a bit. The first product was more interactive nature. And then we pivoted about 2018 into what we were doing now.
So wait, all this is happening, Tye, while 2016, you're doing some kind of, I guess, incubator in Texas to start this company. And at the same time, you were filming X-Men Apocalypse, one of the best X-Men movies ever. Like, how did you have time? Like, and also, what are you thinking? I mean, you're still obviously a young person. You were about 20 years old then. Like, what are you thinking in terms of career? Are you thinking, this is going to distract me from my movie career, which could obviously be very huge, and still you have a huge pathway in front of you? Or were you thinking, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur? Like, what's going on in both your heads while this is happening?
I don't even think I thought that much into it. It was, like I said, we were curious guys. And I think we were always curious about the future of our careers, future of our industry, and future of technologies that will be used for filmmaking. And then it almost seemed like I didn't really separate these things in my mind. It was like I was going and working on these X-Men films and got to see kind of firsthand experience what people were doing in production, how we were doing certain things on the visual effects side of things. And then I kind of got to go back with that knowledge and build technology together. And so with Nikola's kind of post-production knowledge and my experience, getting to hang out with some of these visual effects supervisors and get a chance to ask them questions about certain things, they were nurturing each other, both careers. And I think also, hats off to Nikola. Nikola was always told me, he said, look, I know you have your film career and your acting career, and that is, number one. I want to be there to support you in that. And so we were always really communicative about, if we were going through a period of fundraising, we would make sure to do it at a time where I wasn't going to be on a film set. And then, so it really worked out. And then in 2016, I was working on a film called Ready Player One, and it almost seemed like the world of the film and the character that I was playing was like living the life outside while we were building this company, and like super immersed in interactive technology and storytelling.
Yeah, even more so than X-Men. I mean, Ready Player One really is about the future of Hollywood in some sense.
Yeah, definitely the where we spend our lives, in a digital world, and how we interact in a digital world, and what technologies we use to interface with that world. And so I think that it was kind of, I don't know, it was like both things were inspiring. The startup, the films were inspiring the startup. Startup was inspiring, my aspiration for the characters that I was playing, the films I was doing. So it was they really went hand in hand.
Yeah. But we also had a coincidence. It's quite a big coincidence, because the first product we were building, 2016, I was working on this commercial. We were building kind of 360 VR of early days. This is before the VR device came out, and we used kind of 10 cameras to stitch together. And I remember I called Tye and I said, "There's new technology coming. It's crazy. It's virtual reality.
It's
very
called
new."
the Oculus Rift.
Yeah. This is the Oculus Rift. That I think the first kind of SDK came out, but it wasn't really known. It was still early day startup. So our first product was really, we built this experience of a sort of murder mystery where you can explore the scene. And as we finished that,
Can I ask you, like, did
Please.
you build the 3D objects, and like what was given to you by the software developers kit for Oculus, and what did you build?
actually we built something that you don't need headsets. So we were believers that the headsets will take some time, that it's early, that people, they still want to be passive. So our first product was actually something that lets you switch from 2D into a 360 stream on your, whether it's OTT device or really the proof concept with Comcast early days then. So we were really betting on, I want to explore the scene, but I want to do it on my devices I'm already using. So I don't want to go with the headsets. So this was really early days of it, about 2016.
But also the thing that Nikola built basically was, and this was before we even started developing that, as he was talking about, I was working on this commercial. There weren't any 360 cameras, but he basically used all these GoPros to stitch together up all the frames and then built an editing pipeline in that. And so he said, he called me and he was like, we could make some interactive, content. Let's do something. It was really interesting. And I was super excited. And so
but the funny
that's,
part is that Tye got that audition for Ready Player One after we did this, and we self-funded it. We put maybe $10,000 into like building it and shooting a demo, and had one of the kind of friends and family around, just tiny. And then Tye got the audition for Ready Player One. So it was one of those things where, and I remember when I'm stealing your story, Tye. I remember after you came from audition and you were saying how you were telling Spielberg about our $10,000.
I just told him I was, really excited about VR and kind of the future of VR. And I've been doing this thing with my friend and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, "Oh, really? Well, tell me more about that." And he kept asking questions. And then we started, and this is in the middle of an audition. It was the first time I ever met Steven. I'm going in, there's, maybe 3 or 4 other actors reading for the same role. I don't know if I'm going to get it, but I mean, there's an opportunity to meet one of my favorite filmmakers. And just, so we're just, shooting the bull for 10 minutes. And before I walked out of the room, I told Steven, I said, "Steven, I have to thank you, for your films. I feel like I would be a different kid without them. ETs. I can't tell you how many times I've watched ET in my life, and then he said, "Oh, well, let me tell you a story about ET," and then he just went, and so it kept going. It told me how they shot ET chronologically, and it just we really hit it off. We just totally nerded out, and then I got cast in the film, and then as we were making the film, Steven said, "Well, tell me more about the startup. Tell me more about what you guys are doing." And when we finish the film, we get back to LA. You guys come in and show me a demo. So our first product demo was to Steven.
So basically, probably the company got you played a role in getting you the role. Probably he was excited that you had real world experience in VR, and at the same time, getting the role helped the company because you're like
exactly
like Steven Spielberg's your first customer practically.
When talking about the first demo, we had that demo set up, and I was telling like, this is not a normal startup demo, so like we should now get used to it. And obviously, I was so nervous. Like first demo, this is someone with that high caliber, and obviously we got in a normal startup pitch cycle after that. It's just one of those experiences. But we had a lot of these coincidences that happen, even with kind of how we got that first, and then after that we build a product. As we said, okay, 360 is cool, and then we discovered this other company that was doing conversational AI, 2016, 17, where you can have that switch and think about you watching courtroom drama, and you switch and you can have a conversation with the character, and that branches the narrative. But this is prior to ChatGPT, so cognitive AI wasn't there yet.
But that's interesting, though. It's almost like a choose your own adventure type idea.
Yes.
And that really hasn't happened yet in Hollywood in some sense. I mean, it happens, of course, in the game industry, but it's not like I could watch a show and then just suddenly pause it and start talking to the lawyer in the courtroom drama.
Yeah.
That hasn't happened yet, but that's a good idea.
We were early. This was 2017, 18. We had a demo, and some people were freaked out at it, to be honest. We had people that were like, I don't like this, because it was real. And so that's when Tye and I decided to pivot, because we used AI to also generate some of the scene as we were doing this. And that's really when we kind of had an honest moment with ourselves and said, interacting is cool, but we're more excited about helping us make our own films cheaper. How do we use this?
Sure.
And so that's when we pivoted and did a completely pivot into what today is Flow Studio, which is more using AI to speed up the process of visual effects.
Take a quick break. If you like this episode, I'd really, really appreciate it. It would mean so much to me. Please share it with your friends and subscribe to the podcast. Email me at altucher@gmail.com and tell me why you subscribed. Thanks. Look, as a manager of people, as an employer, as an entrepreneur, and as even an investor in startups, I can tell you the most important thing for your business is the quality of the people you hire. This is so important. And the best part is that great candidates are already on LinkedIn. This is one of the reasons why I love LinkedIn so much. In fact, employees hired through LinkedIn are 30% more likely to stick around for at least a year compared to those hired through the leading competitor. And I will tell you that the great thing about LinkedIn is that you're not just looking at random people. You're able to see the people who your friends and trusted peers and colleagues, who they trust and who they've hired in the past and who they recommend. The connections of your connections are often the best people to hire, the most valuable people in your business. And that's why LinkedIn is so great. It creates this network of trust when I'm hiring. I will tell you, when you hire the right person, you can trust them, and that adds so much value to your business, not just in sales, not just in morale, but just in the entire company culture and in the culture you build. Your culture is not just your employees, it's also your customers and your investors. And to have the right people interfacing with that culture and building that culture, again, it adds so much value to their business. And not hiring the right person, you might as well be out of business. That's how quickly I've seen businesses fail, because they hire the wrong people. And hiring doesn't have to be complicated. With the LinkedIn Jobs AI Assistant, you can skip the confusing steps in recruiting jargon. It filters through applicants based on criteria that you've set for the role. And so what surfaces are the best matches, so you're not stuck sorting through a mountain of resumes. Realistically, when you have a business to run, you don't
want to spend hours on hiring. You want to hire the right person as quickly as possible. That's why LinkedIn Jobs AI assistant suggests immediately 25 great fit candidates daily so you can invite them to apply and keep things moving. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Altucher, then promote it to use LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant, making it easier and faster to find the top candidates. That's linkedin.com/Altucher. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Look, as a manager of people, as an employer, as an entrepreneur, and as even an investor in startups, I can tell you the most important thing for your business is the quality of the people you hire. The best part is that great candidates are already on LinkedIn. Employees hired through LinkedIn are 30% more likely to stick around for at least a year compared to those hired through the leading competitor. And I will tell you that the great thing about LinkedIn is that you're not just looking at random people. You're able to see the people who your friends and trusted peers and colleagues, who they trust and who they've hired in the past and who they recommend. And hiring doesn't have to be complicated. Realistically, when you have a business to run, you don't want to spend hours on hiring. You want to hire the right person as quickly as possible. That's why LinkedIn Jobs AI assistant suggests immediately 25 great fit candidates daily so you can invite them to apply and keep things moving. Hire right the first time. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/Altucher, then promote it to use LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant, making it easier and faster to find the top candidates. That's linkedin.com/Altucher. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. These are the first ever longevity gummies powered by MitoPure, a delicious, easy way to put more energy into your day and to treat yourself. The only clinically proven urolithin A gummy for strength and healthy aging from the inside out. These gummy bears deliver 6x more urolithin A than a glass of pomegranate juice, which, by the way, I was taking a ton of pomegranates as well. So this is the #1 doctor-recommended urolithin A supplement. It's vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, clean label project certified, NSF content certified, and free of major allergens and artificial ingredients. MitoPure is the only clinically proven form of urolithin A. So if you want to stay strong and energized now and as you age, then you have to try MitoPure gummies. My friends at Timeline are offering 20% off just for my listeners. So head to timeline.com/Altucher to get started. That's timeline.com/Altucher. Your cells will thank you.
This message comes from Capital One. With the Spark Cash Plus card from Capital One, you earn unlimited 2% cash back on every purchase and get big purchasing power so your business can spend more and earn more. Stephen, Brandon, and Bruno, the business owners of SandCloud, reinvested their 2% cash back to help build the company's retail presence. Capital One, what's in your wallet? Find out more at CapitalOne.com/SparkCashPlus. Terms apply.
Well, let me ask you, because this is really the critical question. I mentioned earlier, I spoke at this conference in LA, basically directed towards the movie industry. And I remember last year when I first spoke, they were more wondering, hey, could we, use AI to generate our own scripts? Like, what's going to happen with AI? But this year, it was completely the opposite. It was more like, hey, are our jobs over? Like, our studio's going to last? Because what's the role of the studio? It's to basically provide the money for the special effects and the actors and the marketing. That's the biggest parts of the budget, right? So, and if the special effects and even potentially the actors could be done by AI, well, that's a big role for the studio. Then the writers, i.e., for instance, you guys, could potentially make their own movies without spending an extra $200 million on special effects and all the other things. So you start this company. Not only then, but now, like, where do you see this technology going in terms of making movies in Hollywood?
It's funny, that I always say early days, 2018, 19, we're telling people about it. This is coming. It's going to seem like a really drastic shift sudden. But it was very hard to explain to people back in 2018, 19 what we're talking about. It seemed like sci-fi, right?
Yeah, and also they don't want to believe that their jobs could be replaced. And I'm not saying they can be, because there's always going to be roles for humans and all these things. But people are, they come to grips differently with career crisis challenges. Like this is an ongoing career crisis for many people in many industries.
Yeah, it's adaptation. No, what I would say is we started it for a reason of how do we inspire, because both Tye and I come from indie films. So we're like, how do we make something, why we're excited about AI? It really enables small teams to do what traditionally big studios can do, right? So if you have a small studio, small production company, and you don't have access to a $100 million budget, you can tell your story. So that I think the market will expand. So more people will be able to tell stories. But I don't think we're going to lose studios because we're saying if AI gets so good that I can generate something really quickly, that we're going to be okay with that something took a week to make and we're going to go to theaters to buy that ticket. I don't think so. I do think we love filmmaking. For instance, me, I love watching, Spielberg's films or Chris Nolan's films because they're so impressive of how difficult it is to create. Because I know I cannot do what they do, right? So I think that ceiling is going to keep moving. So if the AI makes it easier, we're not going to stop there. The studios will figure out how to push it even further so they can only be the one to do it, if that makes sense. I don't think we're just going to stop at like, hey, now this is easy to make and everybody's going to pay money for something that took a week to make versus 2 years, right?
Yeah, it depends if the creativity, which I do think is, going to always be dominated by humans, if the creativity can expand faster than the technology. Because like if you can make Inception in a week with all the special effects and even with the acting, if you could do that all with AI, yeah, maybe people won't pay for a ticket, but they'll watch it on YouTube where it's put up for free.
But I'm saying there's a new kind of thing that's coming on top of that, right? That's going to be, and we just don't know what that is. Just like you can explain to someone back in the 50s what Avatar is and explain how Avatar was done. They're not going to understand what you're talking about, right? So that's the same thing we don't understand yet because we don't know what that next level of filmmaking is.
If I had to explain or give an analogy for the state of the industry right now, I think it's an industry that's been waiting for a big change. I think AI, could be the catalyst or one of the catalysts for that change. I mean, if you look back at our industry, just talking about theatrical distribution, for instance, you look at how films were made, how they were financed, even indie films, right? You would take a group of actors, you would take them out to foreign markets, you would go and do foreign pre-sales so that all these foreign territories all over the world could vie for the rights for that film, right? Then you'd take those to the bank, get a loan against those contracts, and now you're financing your film with foreign pre-sales, right? I think COVID really sped up the digital distribution process and streaming. People got really comfortable sitting in their homes, watching films at home. Theatrical distribution has really changed so drastically. So you have the entire landscape of distribution that has changed entirely, but the way that we finance films, the way that we make films hasn't changed, right? So you have an industry where all the economics and the models have changed so drastically, and we're still reeling and trying to catch up to speed, right? And then you have AI coming, and then we had the strikes with the writers and SAG and the actors. There's going to be a really big shift, I think, in the next 4 or 5 years, and I don't think anyone has put their finger on it just yet. I still think that we're, it's only the tip of the iceberg. But I agree with Nikola that, if you think about an audience and their mindset, are they going to be that excited by going to watch the Inception, quote unquote, that you make with AI in 1 week that's completely AI generated or AI assisted or however you want to frame it, as they would be knowing that, hey, that film took 120 days to shoot and 2.5 years in post production. And
let's say for me as a moviegoer, I've been reading like the X-Men comics since I was a kid.
Mhm.
Okay, here's now, X-Men, whatever, story they tell. I don't really know that there's been 100 days of shooting and, I give up the ability to, that's a special effect, that's real. When you're watching the movie, your brain tells you everything's real. So maybe the role of the studios is going to be just capturing all the best IP that you can't get elsewhere. But the movie itself, like just thinking about your software that you guys developed and the direction that's going, take it 5 years out. How much of costs of making, Ready Player One or X-Men Apocalypse could be eliminated? The cost could be eliminated because of software like yours.
It really depends, but you can get it down to a tenfold and more. It will drastically change.
So like how much in special effects, like let's say take either one of those two movies that I just mentioned, what was the special effects cost and what do you think the savings could be?
In 5 years,
Yeah.
I think you can cut down a movie that cost 100 million down to 10 million, if not less.
By the way, we have to distinguish between special effects and visual effects. So special effects are practical effects in camera, and then visual effects, like you have a film like Ready Player One, which is mostly visual effects, right? They're inside of the Oasis. All that is done in post-production. Visual effects is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, just to go back a little bit, James, I think going back to, you're not going to know if it took 150 days, but you will recognize if something's lazy. We do. Remember, if you go in theater and you see a movie and it's poorly written, you get really upset. You're mad. You're like, why did I just waste it's almost like you wasted more than 2 hours of your life. Like you're genuinely with art, we get upset like that, right? But that's because we recognize that something was either not the talent you expected or maybe it was lazy. I think it's same with AI. And then the second question is, will we be okay with watching synthetic actors? I don't think so. That's a big part of the cost, right? I would split in AI is such a big category. We're more focused on how do I speed up the process of capturing performance by an actor or lighting a CG character, putting something on screen that doesn't exist in the real world. But you're still shooting, you're still doing production. There's another piece of AI, which is your text to video models that are generating everything. And you're watching actors that don't exist in the real world, right? You're watching synthetic actors. So to me, I don't think we will be dominating box office with all synthetic actors, fully generated AI films.
You could be right. Like I think we don't fully know the answer, but I'll believe you guys. Like I think that could be correct. Just like I think you're not going to be dominated. AI is not going to write the script of a really compelling movie because ultimately it doesn't really have human experience. But the visual effects, that as just in general, that as we've seen the evolution of visual effects and computer generated effects over time, it just gets better and better. Mm-hmm. So that I think has no plateau. And so it won't feel lazy to create a whole environment like Ready Player One, for instance. It won't feel lazy whether it's 1 year from now, 5 years from now, whatever. Even for short films now, it doesn't feel lazy. It feels amazing.
I think it ultimately comes down to the story, right? I mean, I think we in the industry sometimes get a bit deflated because we think, oh, people, there's not good box office performance. None of the films that are coming out or releasing are having any kind of good performance in the box office. And then all of a sudden, one film comes along and it becomes part of the social zeitgeist and it does $1 billion, and so I do think ultimately, if you're lazy with story, regardless of whether you have a fully AI, production or not at all, I think if the story is not there, then people don't care, right? And I think that's really where I think we are in terms of, some of the films that are going out theatrically, that are being released theatrically. I think the stories aren't that original. Occasionally something comes along that blows people away, but I think that's ultimately we're going to go full circle and realize, AI assisted or not, we still have to have a great story that moves people, that compels people. And I think that, the industry in general is so focused on, the general overarching idea of AI replacing artists or actors or directors or writers, etc., and replacing the production process. But I think you have to distill it down and look at what aspects of filmmaking, because it's a really complex mechanism, a system to go and make a film like a Ready Player One. I mean, how many thousands of people work on those? Thousands of people work on these films, and there may be 15 different channels and aspect pillars that are necessary to support these films. And I think if you can take 10 of those pillars and reduce the cost 90%, that's really where we can start to win as an industry, the box office. Not only that, but that's where we can potentially pay our artists more, right? Because we're spending less on the film, on production, so we have more bandwidth, we have more upside potential as well for returns for studios. I think that's where it's all really exciting for me, and it always has been. I guess that's always been the point, which is why we started this company and why we built platform that we built.
So it's interesting. So it's sort of like this is somewhere in the middle between the big budget studio films and the indie films. Like when I think of like, let's just go back to the 90s when everything was like super expensive for everything, any kind of effect at all. So the indie films would be like, okay, two people in a room having dinner and you film it and that's an indie film. And because there's no cost, right, basically. And the big budget films, of course, are too expensive for an indie filmmaker to make. And now, because of the visual effects are so expensive and so on, the studios still have their place. But you're basically saying, listen, even if that's 1/10 the cost, it's still more money than to make Ready Player One or X-Men Apocalypse. It's still more money for the indie filmmaker to really do it justice. So there's still a role for the studios. Meanwhile, their profit margins will go up. They'll be able to pay people more, and the industry will continue to thrive because of these type of software. And at the same time, the indie filmmaker, though, now has more options too. They can make a science fiction movie with some visual effects and, and okay, we're not going to make Ready Player One, or, we can make Mud, but like on another world with
100%.
visual effects.
Yeah, 100%. And that's, I think, and I spoke about this, and I mentioned that publicly many times, is the studios sometimes cannot take big risks, especially with big sci-fi films, and make too creative a film, because they need to, if you make a film for 200 million, you put 100 million in marketing, that's 300 million. So you got to make about 600 to break even, right? Or 500 million to break even. So you can't really make too big of a risk, because you got to attract an 80-year-old and a 60-year-old to like the movie, right? You got to go for the masses. So that's where I think the beauty of, as you say, making mud in the outer world is, if you enable indie filmmakers to do it, because you're always sacrificing something from script to the screen. Always. You write something and then you realize this is not possible, technically or financially, and then you're cutting down and you're editing your script as you're going. So to me, that's really, if you zoom out, the ultimate point is, how do you discover more voices, tell more stories without sacrificing those stories because of either socioeconomic status or some opportunities or technical challenges with it.
So, okay, so you started this company. It's based on your backgrounds in visual effects and acting and the movie experience and so on. What happens next? You build some software. Are you hiring programmers? Like, are you going to the office every day? Like Tye also, are you going from like the set of X-Men Apocalypse to the office and managing developers? Like, what's happening?
We are poor boys. We had a poor boy mentality always. So we never really had an office until we had a lot of employees. But yeah, I mean, I guess just whenever I wasn't working on a film, we were kind of grinding on the startup, and there were so many different phases. By the time the company was acquired, we were about 70 employees. Most of our team, we had some team. We were kind of spread out everywhere. We had, a team in, people in the U.S., Argentina, Eastern Europe, predominantly Eastern Europe, where Nikola is from, and so we had a couple offices there. And so we would go and spend a month or two with the team, and in the early stages. I mean, before we released our platform, I think we were, developing for what, 2.5 years.
More. I mean, before
like
more before we launched, we were in stealth mode almost 4 years. But yeah, so what we did is we ran lean for a long time until we did a complete pivot. We ran lean. It was a much smaller team. We were not rushing out to raise too much. So I think we were big believers in running lean, because the market doesn't follow the hype of Twitter, right, or LinkedIn. Because you always see these cycles that happen, and most of your customers don't care what valuation you are or what round that you seed round, Series A. They don't even know what that means, right? So we really ran lean, and we were very fortunate to have some great backing from some amazing VCs.
Who are some of the VCs? I don't know.
Yeah, so Founders Fund led our seed round alongside Mac Ventures, which is Charles King and Mike Palland, LA-based VC, which we really like them. We had backing from Epic and Samsung. And then our Series A was led by Horizons Ventures, which we really, really like. They have an amazing track record. So we're very fortunate to have, backing of VCs that, really gave us the freedom, and especially around the pivot, when we did the first pivot. But I think for us, we were lean until we really saw product market fit. And, as far as recruiting, we started early. So generative AI wasn't even a term back then. We called it visual AI. And we knew we couldn't really find engineers that knew everything we needed. So we went out and tried to kind of go to these universities. I'm originally from Serbia, so went around a bunch of universities here and spoke to a professor and said, who's your best student in the past 10 years? And so that's how I would meet our CTO, Alexander. He was, one of the professors recommended him, said, our best 20 years. So we went around kind of really trying to find people similar to us that they were very curious, that didn't claim they know everything, but they knew enough either of computer vision or machine learning or visual effects, which was really important for us. And then obviously your soft dev. So we had sort of 4 departments. We had to always find someone who knows at least 2, but they're willing to learn the other 2. So I think that really helped us a lot. And it took a long time. I think it took almost 9 months to find first 2-3 people because we knew that they were crucial in it. Yeah.
Who were some of your first customers? Like, okay, so you're building this visual effects software and it's going to change the whole industry. Who were some of your first customers or willing to try it out?
Yeah, so when we launched, we had a waiting list of about 500,000 people on it. So that was 2023. And we saw this split of, storytellers, individuals, content creators, YouTubers. And on the flip side, there are studios, right? So we made kind of tier programs. So you have your self-serving customers, which is, we had light and pro tiers, and then enterprise tier. And the enterprise tier, Netflix was one of the first customers. On the, kind of self-serving smaller teams, we had, besides individuals, we had, I remember, production companies out of Japan with a team of 5 that would write to us and say, we could never do this before. So happy that this software exists, etc. So if we're being completely honest, for us, that was the exciting part. Those small production companies, small VFX houses, individuals, 2-3 teams that are doing something that they couldn't do before.
And what are some of their success stories using your software? Like in terms of the smaller production companies, did they make movies? Did they make YouTube videos? Like what were they successful with?
Yeah, we had everything from TV shows down to advertising, down to just, people making short form content on their own. For us, big focus on our product was how do I get the performance out from an actor and then drive a CG character and put it in a live action, right? Compose it, animate it, edit it. Something that usually takes weeks that you could get to that first pass, but then edit it. Really, that was a big separation of it. But the interesting part, we saw this kind of thing being used on some format that traditionally wouldn't see, like even something silly as Masked Singer was using it for an episode, down to like advertising like Red Bull and some of the other ones. But for instance, there's a studio, Boxel Studio, use it for a Superman Lewis TV show, and they told us they cut it down from 3 weeks down to 1 week of their because what's going on in visual effects is that budgets are getting smaller, but the quality of demand is higher. So expectations are higher. You're getting less time, less budget. So these VFX houses are also dealing with a lot of pressure, and they have to figure out what tools to use because they're not getting the same amount of times they used to. But now everybody recognizes bad VFX, so you can't really get away with bad visual effects, right? The demand is kind of, the customer's eyes has evolved quite a bit.
So first off, my entire family made fun of me for binge watching the Superman and Lois series. So glad to know that somebody credible was involved in it. I'll have to tell everybody. This is what I've been waiting for. Look, I've done 1,500 podcasts, a ton of podcasts about health and particularly anti-aging. I've had on every anti-aging expert on the planet. And finally, gummy bears to help me with anti-aging. These are the first ever longevity gummies powered by MitoPure, a delicious, easy way to put more energy into your day and to treat yourself. The only clinically proven urolithin A gummy for strength and healthy aging from the inside out. And I've taken it as supplements, but I'm not really a supplement taker kind of person. I'd much rather just like take a bunch of gummy bears and like eat it like candy. You can't really tell how much it's working, and sometimes you don't know for sure. Is it just, are you thinking this? But it does improve energy. Tests showed increases muscle strength by up to 12% after 16 weeks. These gummy bears deliver 6x more urolithin A than a glass of pomegranate juice, which, by the way, I was taking a ton of pomegranates as well. So this is the number one doctor recommended urolithin A supplement. It's vegan, gluten-free, non-GMO, clean label project certified, NSF content certified, and free of major allergens and artificial ingredients. MitoPure is the only clinically proven form of urolithin A. So if you want to stay strong and energized now and as you age, then you have to try MitoPure gummies. My friends at Timeline are offering 20% off just for my listeners. So head to timeline.com/Altucher to get started. That's timeline.com/Altucher. Your cells will thank you.
What can 160 years of experience teach you about the future? When it comes to protecting what matters, Pacific Life provides life insurance, retirement income, and employee benefits for people and businesses building a more confident tomorrow. Strategies rooted in strength and backed by experience. Ask a financial professional how Pacific Life can help you today. Pacific Life Insurance Company, Omaha, Nebraska, and in New York. Pacific Life and Annuity, Phoenix, Arizona.
But now for you, second question is Sora now a competitor to you? Like, are you worried about text to effect type of AI?
Yeah, text to video. It's different. We are more focused on the 3D space, right? We're more focused not getting you kind of final pixels. We're more focused on, can I extract my shot that I actually shot live, not generated, and extract all the information I would need in 3D space, right? So it's very different. We've seen people use both tools together. But for us, I think the big differentiator is a lot of these text to video. That's why we stayed away from 2D space. A lot of these generative tools in 2D space give you kind of a black box that you can't edit to the finest detail. A lot of professionals, they really do need full control of lighting, full control of camera, full control of performances. And that's really something you cannot prompt completely. So that's why we stayed in the 3D space of it. So I'd say it's more complementary than competitive in that aspect.
I'm curious, like, just as an interesting thing, Tye, when you would go on the movie sets while you were developing this company and building this company, it's kind of cool to be part of two different subcultures. Like, probably people on the movie sets knew you as, oh, he's an actor, he's been in these movies, now we're all working together. And then they find out you're like also this tech entrepreneur, mogul, whatever. Like, was that an interesting thing?
I don't know if I can go that far, James.
I was just throwing it in there. But was that something that was like an interesting experience of, you added this extra dimension to who you are on the set?
Oh, no, it was absolutely. I mean, I love learning anything, and I'm a super curious guy, just like Nikola. That's why have become really close friends over these years. And I think when I was on film sets, it was exciting talking to the DPs, the cinematographers, and asking them, oh, when you did that film, how did you guys do this? And how did you do that? And I think people obviously take pride in what they do. And I don't think it's like every day that the actor is asking the cinematographer, specifics about how they did something in post-production. So some people are a little bit like, why are you asking? And then I would explain to them, well, I started this company and blah, blah, blah. I'm curious about this and that. And they said, oh, wow, that's so cool. And then, some people in the film industry, they could care less. They pride themselves on being story people, and they're almost quote unquote anti-technology, which is quite ironic considering that the entire industry is built on the advent of a camera, right? And technology
Sure.
has constantly driven it forward. And so you have people like Steven Spielberg, for instance, who see the benefit of technology in film, who see that it's pushing us forward, who see that, hey, with this technology that we're going to have in 5 years, we're going to be able to do this thing that I've always wanted to do that's never been done in our industry. And so I think you have two buckets, in the industry. You have people that are open to technology, people that are kind of technology enthusiasts, and then people who are more maybe cut from a different cloth, and they're more story people and driven by the story, and they're less, care less about the technology. And then on the tech side, when we go and pitch to investors and stuff like that, I think there was a little bit of pushback. Some investors would sometimes ask me, well, well, you have this career. Why do you need to do this? Why are you doing this? And because I'm interested, I'm curious, and we want to build the future. We want to be part of that, or at least, even if we fail, we'll at least know, a little bit about where the future's going, maybe what mistakes we made along the way.
That was really the big kind of pivot for us when we were deciding to make a pivot in 2018 from that interactive kind of conversational thing into what Flow Studio is today. I remember Tye and I had a conversation. We said, all right, what's the worst thing that can happen? And we said, worst thing can happen, we'll learn the future of filmmaking before anybody else. Because keep in mind, we were making this selfishly to make our own film that we wrote. And then we realized about 6 months in, all right, this is bigger than us. Let's make it on a platform. But that was kind of it kind of gave you this freedom of, all right, we're going in a direction, we're going to learn so much more ahead of the industry. And that's a plus, even if it fails.
And by the way, did you ever finish making your own movie that you initially started this with?
I think
we got too busy. We got too busy.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think we were pretty naive in not understanding just how much it takes to build technology and to run a software company, and all those things, because we thought, well, we'll build the software, and then we'll start a studio, and we'll basically be like the Blumhouse but for sci-fi films, and we'll be making these films on a budget using our own technology. And I think it just, the bandwidth to do all of those things,
But honestly,
it's pretty challenging.
Honestly, I think if we didn't, we wouldn't probably dare to do it. And I speak with the team a lot on it. When we first started, a lot of our engineers also didn't realize how difficult it's going to be. We had advantage of the timing. We started early. We were in a space early. We were building in stealth mode for about 4 years, which really gives us a big advantage. But looking back, I remember speaking to my engineers, and we're saying, it's really good that we did not understand how difficult some of these research problems were, because we probably wouldn't start it. And that's sometimes good. You just jump and go for it versus like overanalyzing it and then you're scared of it.
Well, particularly since, like you said, you even pivoted, but that's because the entire world pivoted. Like, generative AI became a thing. The idea of doing text to video or text to anything, became a new thing. So you were kind of on the ground floor because you were already, looking at heavily into the space. You already had technologists working with you. And so you probably benefited a lot from this switch to AI because everybody was starting fresh.
100%, yeah. And we were early, 2019, as I said, it was really, none of this was talked about at that time. So that really gave us a big benefit. Because if we pivoted when it became a buzzword, we'll be way too late. Because some of the research problems we had to solve took 2-3 years. And that wouldn't be able to, if we started that when ChatGPT came out, that would be way too late, right? So that helped us a lot.
And so then you sold to Autodesk, right? Like, can you say how much you sold to Autodesk for? Was that public?
No, not public, unfortunately.
Can you just tell me anyway? I won't tell anybody.
Yeah, we have a strong NDA, unfortunately, that one. But obviously, life changing for both of us. But I think for us, we had a partnership with Autodesk for about a year before the acquisition. We were not planning to sell. We were raising our Series B at the time. But he helped us, we've spent a year working with them, and the vision's really aligned. We present them what the 5-year, 10-year vision is. And obviously Autodesk is a leading company in 3D especially. It's been for decades.
Sure.
So for us, that really aligned. And Dana Colella, who runs 3D Entertainment, really saw eye to eye with her and what her kind of strategy was on the side. So obviously we're part of Autodesk. I'm part of Autodesk now. It's a good combo of, the 3D knowledge that we had, but we didn't have it at the level we needed it versus our AI knowledge that we brought in.
And do you think Autodesk as a company is able to keep up with the Googles and OpenAIs and these big AI companies that are raising tens of billions of dollars to develop this, among other things, text to video software? Do you think Autodesk is able to keep pace with them in terms of the needs of the movie industry?
Yeah, I think because of the understanding. First of all, I wouldn't be in this company if I didn't believe it. But second of all, I think a lot of companies we're seeing in text to video, they're not really making tools for filmmakers. They're making tools for social media users. And we had this early with VCs. VCs, they're looking for scale, right? You want scales. That's why social media played it's a video tool, right? And video tool is very different than cinema tool. So that's, I think, I would make a big distinction. Because if you're making a film, you need that adaptability. You need that understanding of what makes a shot, understanding of how director operates, understanding what the demand is of a VFX supervisor. Versus if you're making something quickly for social media, you don't have to care so much about editability because you're producing something that you're releasing the same day, most likely, especially around the viral content. This is where I think Autodesk has advantage, is that they come from the space. They understand the filmmaking process. And this process is not going to change overnight. That's what people make a mistake a lot. They're thinking, if you go to Twitter, because of AI, Hollywood's been dead for 5 years now. If you read, the titles, right?
Sure.
Every day, Hollywood's dead, Hollywood's dead. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight. I think there's going to be adjustments for everybody. But yes, for me, the exciting part with Autodesk is the knowledge and decades of knowledge they have working, and not just on a 3D tool, on a, production management tool, etc. So there's a lot of inside knowledge in a strategy. And I think for us, I'm a big believer we have to be in 3D space for these tools to work. You can't just do it in 2D space.
The knowledge, but also kind of the legacy roots that they have within the industry. As kind of the number one 3D software for I don't know how many decades in the industry, the tools that the industry relies on. A trusted kind of brand and partner for us, as Nikola said. Really, it was support of our vision and the future that we both saw that kind of made it the perfect fit.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, because ultimately Steven Spielberg or James Cameron, they're not going to just let a bunch of kids do all their visual effects. Even if they're using AI, they're going to call someone they know, like Autodesk, to say, "Hey, figure this out. Help us figure this out." What about the role of, in terms of like, quote unquote, Hollywood is dead? What about Hollywood is being, not replaced might be the wrong word, but think about studios like Darman Studios that makes these micro dramas. I'm assuming you're familiar with them. I don't know if you are,
Yeah.
but they're starting to have more viewing time on YouTube than movies have. And what's the role of these micro dramas, in kind of the new landscape of Hollywood?
It's interesting. I think, people are trying to, if you look at it, James, the Katzenberg tried to do this with Quibi, right? That's what basically he was trying to do with the.
But he was trying to spend million. He was almost using the old movie mindset. Darman Studios is paying like $2,500 per
different
video.
Different quality. Yes, the acting quality is different. The production quality is very, very, very different. I think different devices are forcing us to consume some of this storytelling differently. I think the market is only going to expand, but I'm not a believer that where I think the studios will actually have big advantage is the marketing spend, because it will potentially follow what happened with the music industry, which is, it was really hard to make a record. Now everybody can just make their own record and put themselves on Spotify. But how do you discover them? Very hard to discover them. You either are doing guerrilla marketing on social media as an artist and you break through the noise somehow, by some miracle, 1 in a million, right? I think if we do start producing more with AI generated content, there's going to be different pockets in social media, micro dramas. They're going to be more generative. Studios will use it more for visual effects. But I think if we start seeing this influx of AI generated content, really what's going to break it through is the marketing spend on some of this. And I think that's where studios will end up leading, alongside what I said earlier, which is they're just going to figure out how to make things bigger, which I don't know what that is yet, but they will.
Yeah, no, it's all interesting to see what's happening. So I guess what's next in everything. So Tye, like what's the next movie you're in? What are we looking forward to?
The next movie is going to be a movie called The Housewife with Naomi Watts. And it's a small movie, small indie film. And yeah, that's probably the next. We shot this movie back in earlier this year in spring, April, May. So looking forward to that. And then yeah, just keeping an eye out for those special miracle projects. For me, it's at this point in my career, I really want to strive to work with amazing people. I want to push amazing stories out there and into the world that really compel people. And I don't think it's not every project, so I'm looking for that 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 maybe that could be those miracle projects. And so yeah, that's where I'm setting the bar these days. And lots of people out there that are super talented and amazing people I'd love to work with. So we'll see. The future is exciting.
And I'm just curious too, like, given now we have for the past many years, Netflix, Amazon Studios, Apple TV Plus, Hulu making original shows, all these companies are making hundreds of new, they're spending tens of billions of dollars a year on making new TV shows, movies, and so on. What I wonder is, how come there's people who don't have jobs who are writers or actors? There must be like 20,000 new openings for writers and actors. Why do people still go to Hollywood and remain unemployed? Remain waitresses or waiters.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good point. And I was actually speaking with George Clooney about this same thing, and he said, "Look, I mean,
I feel like that was a little bit of a flex you just did there." I was just
well, we
talking
did
about-
we did it. We did a film together, and he directed me, and he's a really smart guy and has interesting thoughts on the industry. And we were just kind of talking about, I think he said, well, young actors come to me sometimes, and they feel like the future is dismal. They feel like, oh, budgets are getting smaller, and we're not getting paid as much, and the films aren't performing well theatrically. And I said, no, but look at the other side. So many people are out there making shows, they're out there making films. There's so much content being produced. Therefore, there's way more opportunities, right? And I will say, play devil's advocate, and this is me talking, not Clooney. Maybe not all those projects will be super high quality, Chris Nolan like movies. But there's a lot of opportunities out there. So I don't know. How are people, still staying unemployed?
Yeah, maybe I think. Sorry to interrupt, but I think the big problem is that a lot of this employment was centralized in LA. And what happened, especially with TV shows now, it's really spread out to Europe and other countries. I have so many friends, especially after strike, that had to move out of LA they couldn't afford because they're just not getting hired. There's not that production, not many production. So there is a really big challenge right now with the crews. There's less work, especially in California, than it's ever been. And that's a big issue. And I think, yes, there's so much more content, but majority of this, especially TV content, is not being filmed anywhere we're used to, right? It's mostly moving to some other countries. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of issues with people struggling.
That's with crews, maybe, and maybe with writers. When you have writer rooms, focused in one area. But even on small films, like especially Nikola, you bring up a good point. If you're going to shoot a film in Europe and it's an independent film, the producers really don't have enough budget to. I mean, yes, they can fly like maybe the one or two actors from the U.S. or L.A. or New York or whatever, but you can't get everyone from the U.S. I mean, that's a lot of round trip tickets, US to Europe. You got to get people in London, so I think that does have an impact, but I think more so on the crews than it does, I'd say, the artist, because you can write from anywhere and send a script in to somebody. They could then, be, someone could acquire the rights to and package it and put it together and go make the film.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
TV is a little different, and I don't know. I don't have much experience in TV, so I'm not going to comment on that. But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question.
Well, what you guys are kind of saying is maybe though, because it's now opened up to the whole world, maybe while the demand has increased because there's so many more shows and movies being made, maybe the supply also exists, and because now it's opened up to the whole world for, if we're shooting this TV series in Canada, let's just find actors right here in Canada as opposed to bringing them from LA. So maybe the supply has kind of met the demand, which is why there's still that feeling of, it's hard to get a break. It's hard to get an opportunity.
Yeah, there's the problem. There's a problem. Mm-hmm.
I was just going to comment on that quickly, James. You bring up a really good point. In Canada, for certain films to get a rebate or to get a tax credit, you have to have a certain amount of crew and cast Canadian, right? They have to be Canadian residents. So like I shot a film in Canada, when was this? Maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And, most of our cast was Canadian, but the producer on the film was telling me, we had to cast, all of these roles had to be Canadian so that we could get, this rebate. So you have a limitation there, you can't just get all of your cast from LA or New York.
There's also during COVID, there was such a spike in demand, and everybody thought that's just going to remain at that level, which it didn't, right? And then there was a shortage of of crew. There was a shortage of VFX artists, right? It went crazy spike up. And then obviously, after COVID, people not spending as much time watching TV or watching shows as they used to. So now you have a lot of, crew members without a job. So.
Well, you guys have had such an interesting background. It's like, I think it's very interesting when you kind of take multiple disciplines and are able to participate at the highest level in each of these disciplines, particularly when they're interacting with each other. What's next for you at Autodesk? Like, you guys are entrepreneurs. Are you going to stay at Autodesk forever? Is there, Nikola, is there a next project that you're both going to work on and
yeah, so
maybe
I think
startup?
for me, obviously we have a vision and a goal. This is, the product's our baby, and I'm not leaving it until it's finished. And we have some big announcements coming up, some new features, like text to 3D, animation to 3D that is coming up. But as far as the film side, still writing. Tye and I are still looking at projects to produce and make together. So that dream didn't go away, right? This is, the tech kind of cuts in the middle of it. But I think that's just something that we'll always want to do. So
It's funny, you built and sold a whole company just to make movies cheaply for yourselves. Now that you've done that, now you can eventually make the movie. So I look forward to watching that movie.
It's funny. We're talking about the fear of writing a script and creating a film. Is sometimes, we as artists tend to be such perfectionists that you kind of have this freeze of making something. And I always say, starting a company and selling a company, potentially a little easier than creating a film in my mind. But
Really? That's interesting.
Now it's obviously, extremely difficult. But I think, sometimes you find yourself in this position where, from an artist standpoint, you tend to find excuses on why you can't do something, and then you find something else, and then you put all your effort in that.
So you're saying starting and selling an entire company was just procrastination on writing your film?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect translation.
A 10-year procrastination.
Yes. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it and learning
Thanks
more.
for having us.
And it's such gave me a lot of insights, and you helped me formulate my opinion or even change my opinion on how Hollywood's going to expand in the coming years, given all this AI and new technologies. So I appreciate that. And yeah, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
This November, action is free on Pluto TV. Go on the run with Jack Reacher.
Every suspect was a train killer.
Then buckle up for Drive, World War Z,
Every human being we save is one less to fight.
and Charlie's Angels.
Damn, I hate to fly.
Launch into sci-fi adventure with The Fifth Element and laugh through the mayhem in Tropic Thunder.
What is going on here?
All the thrills, all for free. Pluto TV. Stream now. Pay never.
Oh, the car from Carvana's here. Well, will you look at that? It's exactly what I ordered. Like, precisely. It would be crazy if there were any catches. But there aren't, right?
Right. Because that's how car buying should be. With Carvana, you get the car you want. Choose delivery or pickup, and a week to love it or return it.
Buy your car today with
Carvana.
Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.